Hey, Retcon Raider here. Well, we're almost 3 months into 2020, and I think it's fair to say that things are starting to pick up a little. Granted, it's a slow build, but we'll almost certainly be seeing some rather significant spikes over the next few weeks. We'll be talking about that in just a moment, but for now, let's stay focused on February, which, to be perfectly honest, was actually a pretty uneventful month. That's not to say it was a bad month. It was just a month. No unexpected windfalls, no annoying YouTube drama. There was a new game to play and a couple of promising new Kickstarter campaigns to talk about, but otherwise it was really just business as usual. That said, let's go ahead and have a quick look at the numbers. Now, according to the analytics, our gains in February included roughly 180 new subscribers, 112,000 global views, and about 15,500 hours worth of total watch time. Nothing terribly exciting, but we did see some very slight gains in both views and total watch time. We saw some slightly more significant gains where subscribers are concerned, but again, that's actually well below our monthly average. As far as our overall video performance went, this was definitely a pretty oddball month. During slower and less eventful months, it's not uncommon to see one or more of my older videos creeping into the monthly top 10. But this month, we actually ended up seeing 5 of my older videos breaking that threshold. I think that's actually the first time that's ever happened. Of course, I suppose it does make sense. I mean, after all, 2 of the videos in question are about the Wasteland 3 alpha. Given that we're right on the cusp of the beta launch, the hype levels are already through the roof, and it's only going to keep climbing from there, at least until the game's full launch on May 19th. Though, that said, it's a little harder to understand why videos like my old Color of Madness overview or Episode 3 of my Backer Build 5 series somehow managed to outperform pretty much every other video in February. I suppose that's just the work of YouTube's perpetually perplexing recommendation routine. I mean, look, I'm certainly not complaining. Views are views. Still, I just wish I could figure out why YouTube does these things. Then again, I suppose that's the entire point. Deliberate obfuscation to prevent blatant exploitation. Certainly not the perfect system, but it's the only one we've got. Regardless, it's nice to see that all 3 of my special projects from February also managed to make it into the monthly top 10. While I do tend to gravitate towards gameplay videos these days, I still love promoting new and upcoming strategy and role-playing games, especially ones from smaller studios that you might have otherwise missed. I will say that the one big surprise in February was the rather abrupt and almost completely unadvertised release of Corruption 2029. I'm sure you guys remember, but I was a huge fan of Mutant Year Zero. In fact, I did an entire series on it. While I do think that Corruption 2029 fell a little bit short of what Mutant Year Zero had to offer, I still think it was a pretty solid title, especially given that it's basically advertised as a budget game. While I had originally only planned a short 3-part series, there does seem to be a fair amount of demand for at least a little more. I certainly can't make any promises, but I might end up throwing together a few more episodes, as time allows. For now, though, we've got some much higher priority projects looming on the horizon. For one thing, we've obviously got the Wasteland 3 beta, which is coming out on March 17th. And that's basically going to end up completely dominating my production schedule for the remainder of March. Then, as if that weren't enough, I'm also starting to hear rumors that the very first alpha build for Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous might be coming out in April. I'm not sure when or even if that's actually happening, but if it does, then that will end up taking over my production schedule in April as well. We've also got a couple of other notable titles popping up, like Alder's Blood and Gears Tactics, but I'll be honest, I'm just not sure I'll have enough time to actually get to them. I'll certainly try, but I think it's safe to say that games like Wasteland 3 and Wrath of the Righteous will almost certainly end up taking precedence. Now, sadly, that also means that our two current ongoing series, Kingmaker and Phoenix Point, are likely to become a little more sporadic for a while. I'm not going to go so far as to completely pause either series, but I will be dedicating the bulk of my spare time towards working our way through the upcoming beta and alpha builds. Thankfully, most of these early access builds do tend to be relatively short and self-contained, so with any luck, the disruption should be fairly minimal. I mean, after all, it only took me 2 videos to get through the Wasteland 3 alpha. Then again, we did end up running through 18 episodes for the Kingmaker beta, so I guess it's really hard to tell, at least until we've actually got our hands on them. Regardless, rest assured I have every intention of continuing with both Kingmaker and Phoenix Point, as time allows. Between the two, I'll probably end up pushing out new Phoenix Point episodes a little more frequently than new Kingmaker episodes, but that's mainly because I think the Phoenix Point series is a lot closer to reaching its inevitable end. I'd really like to have that series wrapped up over the next couple of months. That way we'll be ready to dive into a potential Season 2. Preferably once we've got a bit more DLC to play with. At any rate, I think that just about covers everything from February, as well as our general plans for the next couple of months. So let's start winding things down. As usual, I'd like to close things out by giving thanks to all of you. Not just my audience in general, but also you fine folks in particular. The ones who are so dedicated that you're actually willing to sit there and listen to me ramble for 10 minutes straight. I know I've said it before, but the simple fact of the matter is that I would not still be doing this if it weren't for folks like you. I am constantly thrilled to see how much people are enjoying the videos that I produce, no matter how painfully amateur those videos might actually be. It's especially flattering given my own reservations when it comes to things like social media hijinks or aggressive self-promotion. I've never really been comfortable with those sorts of marketing gimmicks, so I'm glad to see that I can still build an audience without having to resort to those sorts of measures. And of course, I'm especially grateful to the Raiders, the fine folks who help support the channel financially. As hard as it is to believe, I've actually been doing this for almost 3 years now, and in that time, it's grown from a hobby into something that's, a lot closer to a second part-time job. A fun and often fulfilling part-time job, but also one that basically pays 1/10 of the current minimum wage. In fact, during slower months, such as January and February, the ad revenue isn't even enough to cover the channel's basic overhead. Thankfully, with the extra support I get from the Raiders, I not only have enough to comfortably cover those various costs, but I also often have a little left over for things like computer upgrades, new games, and even the occasional crowdfunding campaign. That said, I'd like to give special thanks to my honorary Raiders from February: A Normal Joe, Austin Fagan, Benjamin Gray, Bedrystki Aliaksandr, Brad Quinn, Cecil Kane, crxcrvs, ICU Uwu, Kim S. Jensen, Mark Richards, Maximilian Monke, Mozzie Melton, Mike Zitter, Mr. Scar Lectures, Rob H., Sander Temijer, Tom Edward Idland, and Yokes. I'd also like to give extra special thanks to my veteran raiders from February: AdriRaven, Alois, Ash, Ben Hollingshead, Drakiith, Eoftar, Eric Teichmiller, Exsellsior, James Trimmier, Laura and Mike, Leroy Nukenson, Matthew Holmquist, Mildly Nuclear, Nod Goblin Nico, Sir Skelibate, The Cursed Typewriter, and Woe77. Oh, and of course, special mention to Revenant, my fellow warlord, as well as both Mike Spark and Valinrook, my 2 raider captains. Those 3 have shown an incredible amount of support for the channel, well beyond anything that I could have ever expected. As always, if you'd like to support the channel yourself, then feel free to check out the links to my PayPal and Patreon accounts in the description below. Like I said, the vast majority of that money gets folded right back into the channel, either directly, as in the case of new games or upgrades, or indirectly, in the form of energy drinks, to help ward off the grasping claws of Narcoleptos, the demon lord of slumber. Of course, I can't really offer much in the way of rewards. It's mostly just access to blog posts, monthly polls, and the occasional shout-out or early access to one of my new videos. More importantly, though, those donations help ensure that I can continue producing new and often more varied content. I mean, heck, that's what made it possible for me to support 2 different crowdfunding campaigns just last month. That means that every single video I do about Cyber Knight's Flashpoint or Wrath of the Righteous is thanks, at least in part, to the generosity of the raiders. At any rate, you guys know the drill. That's more than enough begging for one month, so I think it's finally time to wrap this up. This is Retcon Raider, signing off. Thanks for listening. Oh, and remember, if you need to contact me for any reason, just leave a comment on any of my videos. Or you can reach me through my Facebook page, my Patreon account, my Twitter feed, or my official email address. As always, links are in the description.